Hello and welcome to season 3 finale. And like every show, every great show that has a season finale, you need to bring out something shocking or something that you can tease that people want to see. So Greg Sher is on today, who I would consider the tentpole of what is happening in the mortgage industry.
Tentpole or tadpole?
Tentpole, like everything. If you don't have that, then what do you? Then you can't really have a show. And
that opening was great, by the way. Short though.
Well, you know, we are the ultimate hub of hidden stories behind the mortgage industry, and we help them come to life. So Mike and I, every episode, we dive in deep into the entrepreneurial spirit, the strategic insights, and the breakout innovation that build the world's greatest mortgage companies.
Do I have to be
so whether
serious
you're advancing in your career?
Do I have to be
scouting for industry leaders?
Is this sponsored by someone? What's going on here? Are you reading like an ad?
No. So for our this goes out on audio, and I know a lot of people like to listen to it while they're shoveling. So I wanted to make sure that we had something where our target audience is always people that, to me, that can't go to the conferences because they're so talented. Their owners don't want to get them out there and get recruited. So loan officer, processor, or they just don't realize what happens out there and how it can unlock a lot of keys. So a lot of our guests, we try to, are people that go to these conferences, and you and I just came back from the IMB. So, you know, I think there's a lot of motivation. Everybody's very happy, but we would like to dive in real quick. And I know you're going to want a curveball to some of the topics, but can we just talk about NFM real quick?
I'm very distracted by your background. It looks like you have wings and you're about to fly away. You look like a butterfly or something, or a bird. It's very weird.
The background.
That's fine. I'm going to try. Listen, I've got a terrible case of ADHD. I'm going to try and keep it in check because that's really distracting to me. Brian Views here. Oh my goodness. I mean, talk about a star. I mean, this guy's running the greatest nurturing system in the history of mankind for people that are early on in the loan funnel. FinLocker. Go FinLocker.
Yeah, seriously. Hashtag FinLocker.
He's the man. All right, Mike, what do you want me to say? I'm in NFM lending. I've been here for, this is like the dating game. I got here in 1998, and I was here till 2002. I started as a loan officer back when it was the wild, wild west, and zero. See how distracted I am? Zero barriers of entry back then, and that's hence how I got in. And went from a loan officer to an executive at NFM, where I am now. This was 1999, 2000. And then in 2002, I decided to open up my own mortgage company, grew that to 120 people. We were a lender. We were doing a lot of business with Flagstar and others, and had 120 or so employees. And then in 2009, I made the decision to take 106 of those people and come back to NFM, and I've been here ever since. So I'm a unicorn. I've been in one company for 27 years, sans the window where I did it on my own and learned a lot during that experience as well.
I think I was going to ask, because you've been like in a lot of positions and you've grown, and then you've, like you just said, you've left, you've come back. We wanted to touch a little bit on, in this world where you have more access to a bigger platform, I think people want to grow as fast as possible. Knowing what you know now, what would you say to those people that want to, you know, run a company or want to be in this super management position? Just patience. Like, how would you tell them that you'll get there? You don't have to get there tomorrow, because that's something I even struggle with, and I think a lot of us do in this world.
Well, I wish I could make it more complicated than it is. It's all about building relationships and caring for people and showing them how much you care, being a good listener, putting in the time and the energy and the effort above and beyond to demonstrate that you care about people. And when you do that, people want to win for you. When you don't do that and you're not a good listener and you show disregard for people, then that's just a certain style that I don't like or believe in. Now, there are some successful people in our business that anchor themselves to that style. But for me, my advice is to lead with love and live your life with love. And if you do that, you'll get to the right places, you know, that you're supposed to go. And that's half of the equation. The other half is just getting out there, being more visible, developing a brand on social media, which is so important these days. I've been able to do that over a short period of time, which I'm sure we can get into. So those would be the two things. God bless you, Michael.
Thank
Bless
you.
Do you have a cold or something? What's going on there?
No, I just
No, just a sneeze, just a random sneeze.
just a
Greg,
random sneeze.
It's fascinating to me that you say that because me being here in California and growing up the majority of my life in California, having a few years living in the Midwest, you meet a lot of people with a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different cultures. And when you're in the mortgage industry on the sales side, you meet a lot of people who are ADHD or get easily distracted. But you also meet a lot of self-serving people at the same time. However, something that you do differently, Greg, I'd like to address. When you first started in the mortgage industry, nobody just enters into the mortgage industry on purpose, unless actually that's what you want to do. But I think you were once in media, radio, or some kind of background in that. How did you start to say, I'm going to be in the mortgage industry, and then go to transition? We're going to talk a little bit about this journey as we move forward in a series of questions. Transitioning from that into mortgage, doing something for money, and then transitioning into doing something with more heart. Because this all of us movement's a big deal, but it had to have stemmed from some kind of impetus at the beginning either of your career or even when you were younger. Can we talk?
I grew up in a broadcasting family. My father was on an ABC affiliate as a TV anchor and a talk show host for 37 years in Baltimore. So I decided at a very young age I wanted to be a sportscaster, and I was a sportscaster. My first job out of school was working for an all sports radio network, a startup out of Dallas called Prime Sports Radio. So I did that, and then I got hired away by the Baltimore Ravens. In their first year, they invited me to come home to my hometown of Baltimore to be a pre and post game guy, and that was a blast because we got the NFL. We had lost the Baltimore Colts many years before. There was a lot of pain, and that was extinguished to a large degree when that happened. I love that. And then a year into that, the Baltimore Orioles radio station, WBAL Radio, which is a 50,000 watt station. It's one of the most powerful signals in America, asked me to be their sports director. And that's when I really had a job with a big light on me. And I was 26 in a top 25 market, doing all the things that a kid would dream of in their hometown. And quite frankly, I was not prepared for that job. I thought that I could just show up and wing it. And my greatest life lesson was that I didn't take that job seriously. I took it for granted. I took for granted the importance of preparation, and thought I could just use whatever little skill I had to BS my way through. And I was demoted to a weekend guy. I would have been fired altogether, honestly, if my dad was not a prominent TV personality in town. I think the executive leadership wanted to treat me with kid gloves, and I'm grateful they did. So I became a weekend sports guy. I needed something to do during the week. A friend of mine was 23. He was in the mortgage business. And he said, look, man, this business I'm in, I'm 23. I've made $75,000 year to date. I can't believe how much money I'm making. And I said, well, let me look at what you're doing. So we went and we met at a restaurant. I remember him taking out a napkin and trying to explain to me what an escrow was. It took me days. I was like, we had to have like 3 conversations about escrow and what it was. And so that was the beginning of my mortgage career. And I was an LO, and a pretty successful one. And so that started my foray into mortgages. And ironically, I learned my lesson and actually was offered the job that I lost back years later, 8 or 9 years later. But at that point, I had already opened up my own mortgage company. I had tasted the success. I had started to fall in love with the industry. And of course, I was making a lot more money than I was making on the radio, where my salary in 1996 or 7 was 48 grand for the year. So
did you get any season tickets with that though?
Yeah, I was in every locker room imaginable. I mean, I talked to every athlete of that era: Jordan Gretzky, Cal Ripken, Eddie Murray. I mean, you name it. I went to Super Bowls and championships, but in the capacity of a media member. And so that's very different than sitting in the stands and cheering, and it's actually grueling. It's a pain. Like you wait for those extra couple of minutes when the game's over, win or lose, you're in the locker room talking to your hometown team, and if they're not feeling good and they're a little salty and you ask the wrong question, and they stand up and there's, like Albert Bell once stared me down pretty bad. He scared the hell out of me. I was just a 25-year-old kid in Dallas. And I asked him a question he didn't like. He stood up and said, "What'd you say to me, boy?" And I'm 5'9", 5'8". He was, and he's 6'4". He's Albert Bell. He probably would have hit me if I gave him the wrong answer. So
he's famous for getting hit by a pitch, 98-mile-an-hour pitch, and not wanting to go to first. And wants.
Yeah, no, he was a badass, man. He's a great player. But I love sports. Played sports, most of my life, and thought I was going to go that direction. And so I think you'll begin to understand, knowing that background, how it is that I'm doing what I'm doing on LinkedIn and on socials and doing video and things, because that's right in my wheelhouse. That is my true love, is interviewing people, broadcasting, being a journalist, doing research, breaking stories. That is me, man. That is right in my heart and my soul. But I love this business as well. And we've been through a lot. We've been through many ups and downs. Having been in the business 27 years, I remember where I was 9/11, was in this business then. Financial crisis, COVID, and everything in between, Dodd-Frank, TRID, and the GFE, and all these things, the LE. It's like, and now we're going through yet another transformation where maybe all that stuff is going to go poof. Who knows?
Can we go back a little bit in time to the beginning part of your career? You mentioned that your friend brought you into the industry, and then it's your first year. Obviously, you're doing something that you probably enjoy. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. What was it like for your transition to go from I love making the money that I'm doing to I want to be able to do something further, as you transition from LO to owner, or from LO to owner, or wanting to be an owner? Actually, let's go back even further, from loan officer to I want to be an owner, and then we'll transition, and then we'll ask questions into how you went from wanting to be an owner to your merger with NFM.
Well, so I just did a lot of observing. I watched the two owners that I had worked for. I started out at a company called Knox Financial Group in Baltimore. It was my first job. I was there for 6 months. The owner was wildly successful. And I watched a lot of the things that she did, and some of them I loved, and some of them I thought to myself, man, if this was me in the seat, I'd handle it a different way. And then I went to NFM, and the same kind of exercise took place, where I just took a lot of mental notes and watched how people reacted to certain things, watched how the owner handled things, thought about how I would handle it if it was me in that position. So I took a lot of mental notes. I didn't write anything down, but it was kind of like I got my PhD in mortgage just by watching others and really paying close attention. So I was like an understudy in my mind. And I just felt like, you know what, I'm gonna shoot my shot. I'm gonna take my shot. Leveraged everything I had. I didn't get a dime from anyone, really. I think my parents might have given me a check for $8,000, if I remember, correctly, and just to say congratulations when I opened up my company. But I leased 4,000 square feet. I didn't have one single employee. I leveraged the equity in my house. Went about $150,000 in debt, and I bet on myself, and it worked. And I got one person, then I got another, then I got another. Before I knew it, my office was filled, and I needed a space upstairs. So that's how it worked.
I remember with Easy Mortgage Apps all those years, we had a lot of loyal people, my brother included, that sweat equity, but there was a degree of risk that you took that is not there on the sweat equity. And it's sometimes hard to explain internally, because yes, they are giving up the salary they could have got. They are sacrificing a lot of hours. They have as much passion in seeing this thing succeed. But if it doesn't succeed, they're not going to have, IRS, lien people. I'm just making up things though, like creditors, UCC, whatever that is. There is an extra level of being a true entrepreneur that when it's all over, they will have lost maybe years of their life financially, but not, learning, but they can still walk away. As an owner, you still, your parents still gave you $8,000. And if it didn't work, or the house, would have been an issue. So I think people forget that that's a big part. Certain people there's only amount of certain people that are built to take those risks and go about it. I commend you for that.
Yeah, but that's not
Truly.
there's a lot of people that go even farther and that take the bigger risk. I chose to cash in my chips, and I wasn't prepared emotionally after the financial crisis and what I endured, even though we were doing better than we had ever done. We were a refi shop, okay? So you can imagine after the financial crisis, rates went down. Every single VA loan, every single FHA loan, they were all in play, and we were crushing it. We didn't have enough LOs for the leads that were flying in from the mailers we were doing, okay? But still, I knew in the back of my mind that in order for me to get to that next level, I would have to control more of my business. So as I started to apply for things like a line of credit from Wachovia at the time for my MIP and these various other things, the appetite to support mortgage was zero, okay, if that. So despite the fact I had 800 credit scores, money in the bank, no debt, none of it mattered. They didn't want anything to do with mortgage. And that was like an oh shit moment to me where I was like, wow, I could lose it all. And the other thing was that I had all my eggs in the Flagstar basket. We had all of our warehouse lines through them. You know, I'm a big relationship guy, so I went all in on them, and it paid off, paid huge dividends in terms of the VIP bonuses and things like that. But the thing I couldn't see is that when the mortgage business almost fell into the abyss, having all your eggs in one basket all of a sudden wasn't a positive. So they got their TARP funds, which is what every bank needed for the most part to survive past 2008 or whatever the year was. And they got them literally in the 11th hour, like 11:30 p.m. the night before. Otherwise, my business would have collapsed completely. So when that happened, I was like, okay, red flag. Let me pay really close attention. And then when I started to apply, that was the moment where I was like, okay, I gotta start to control my own destiny. I need to start getting these other accoutrements to my business so I can get a full legal and all these things. And when I started to run into resistance and saw that no one had an appetite for it, I just decided to cash in my chips. You know, I was like Barry Sanders walking away from the NFL in his prime. I wasn't gonna take the chance to ruin everything that I had built. But I'll say this along the way, and I'm going to take you in a different direction. I made a lot of money. I blew a lot of money. You know, that's something I had to learn too is, you know, when you own a business and you're able to just walk into the bank and take out, you know, large sums of money, I'm not talking millions or anything, but just, hey, let me go grab 30 or 40 grand, you know, at a clip or whatever, which is a significant amount of money. You know, I also had to learn, a lot of hard lessons too. I was a 34-year-old owner of a company. And so, I had to learn from that, and I had to learn from that several times. So I think a lot of people go through that and just, we're all reinventing ourselves all the time, right? Or we have to be willing to. And I'm sure we'll get into the all of us, you know, movement and how.
Let's touch that a little bit right now with my next question for you. There's a common thread that with your all of us movement is that from the beginning of your career in broadcasting into first starting in the origination and mortgage origination industry, and then moving on to starting your own company and then bringing them all aboard to NFM. The common thread is your relationships. And I like to be able to touch one thing though. How do you go from being self-serving to understanding a big picture, not just for yourself, but for everybody, and then having not only the desire to bring everybody aboard, but making it into a movement, because all of us is a movement for the entire industry. But you started locally with yourself by starting your own branch, and then regionally when you brought aboard 120 originators to NFM, you have to be able to start a movement. You have to be not only create a culture for yourself, but you also have to create a culture for your entire multiple circles of influence. How do you
with less technology back then too?
Yeah. Where is your mindset with love? What's your mindset with care? And what's your mindset with wanting to do that? Did you have an impetus somewhere that says, I'm going to bring everybody with me in my successes?
Well, I got a taste of that when I took my 106 employees and moved into NFM. And by the way, a lot of the people that I brought, 12 to 15, that is a lot. 16 years later are still at NFM and still in some pretty prominent positions. So that gave me a lot of confidence that, you know what, being a leader of people can work, and you can take chances, and you can put your well-being aside for the betterment of others. So that worked out. That gave me confidence. As far as all of us, it was an accident. So, you know,
An accident.
yeah, it was an accident. I remember about 2 years ago, I was really frustrated. Maybe it was the first FICO hike, or maybe where rates were headed. There was something, you know, one of the dozens of things that have happened to create a headwind for mortgage. And I looked up one day, and I didn't see any of the CEOs out there speaking up for any of these issues. And I thought to myself, where is everybody? You know, we've got all these huge lenders that have been around forever with these iconic figures. Casey Crawford, Patty and Rick Arviello, Ron Lenhart, Victor Chardelli. I mean, these are legends of the game, and so many more. Steve Jacobson, you know, another guy. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out. These are all, to me, legends, just to be clear, right? And some others. Why don't I ever hear their voices? Why aren't they picking us up and carrying us on their back in the name of the business and ultimately in the name of the consumer? And so I did a couple of posts on LinkedIn, like, where are you folks? Like, can somebody please speak up? We have a void when it comes to leadership. And when Dave Stevens passed away, that void got even greater. And when that fell upon deaf ears for various reasons, I mean, I heard from people at pretty much all the companies about why this leader doesn't want to do that, or why he or she is focused on this instead of that. I said, you know what? I'm just going to start talking about issues that matter to people and see where it goes. And the more I posted, the more traction I got, the more followers I got. And the pivotal moment to all of us was I was attending my good friend Brian View. He invited me to the Broker Action Coalition. They had an event here in DC, I don't know, maybe a year ago. And I was watching Katie Sweeney, who at the time was the co-founder of it, or she'll always be the co-founder of it, right? It's not at the time. But she was on stage talking about things that are important to everyone in the business, you know, talking about making homeownership more available for veterans, talking about trigger leads, talking about credit costs. And I am, this lender in this room, you know, and this is, by the way, after the brokers are better BS, right? So there was already this divide, right? And here I am in a room as an IMB listening to Katie talk about things that are important to me. And I'm like, wait a minute. This stuff is important to all of us. All of us. Hashtag all of us. Let's start talking about it. And I did. And what I found is that, and I call it the 98%, like, you have the 2% of the world that's out there, that's visible, that's us. We're in executive leadership positions, blah, 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 right? We got the cushy jobs, but that's not what makes this business go. What makes this business go are all the underwriters, the admin people, the LOAs, the receptionists, the accounting people. I could go on and on and on. That's the underbelly of the business. That's our engine, right? Without any of them, we're not around. So I started talking about things that were important to those people too, right? And some of my posts addressed the green banners during the mass layoff time. You know, I wrote an open letter to, you know, dear green banners, you know, we know how you feel. We're sorry this happened. We'll make sure that we don't make this mistake again and make false promises to you. And I even laid on the tracks and said, I fell victim of this. At one time, I said NFM never had a mass layoff because it didn't. And I used to sell, if an underwriter was thinking about NFM or another company, and they're like, well, am I going to be last in, first out? I would proudly say from the top of the mountaintop, you know, we've never had mass layoffs in NFM. We've never laid a bunch of people off at one time. You're going to be safe. It turns out that we, like everybody else, had to scale back. And so I learned a lesson there. And that's another thing I would say is, if you're someone that's in business, trying to get in business, whatever, always be willing to admit when you're wrong and to learn from your mistakes. So there's a lot to unpack there, but now you understand how all of us got created and started to move. And the more I posted, the more people rallied around it. And that's where we are today.
On that note, I think NFM is one of the greatest destinations for any loan officer. And the reason has a lot to do with, I think, your DNA, Greg, of understanding how to constantly wake up and compete for attention. And I think you are a master of it. And I'm guessing it's from having to get up every day on the sports radio side of things, where I don't know exactly how it is in Baltimore, but they're very competitive here because there's 2 stations here in Boston, but they're constantly looking at ratings, demographics. Did we go up and down? And so I know with what you put out there, the content that you put out there, you seem to understand about a day ahead of everybody else what people want to hear. And I think the greatest presentation I saw at all the conferences I went to last year, and I hope there's more of it, but your presentation on your influencer group and just the real impact that it has, like actual consumer eyeballs. I think eyeballs are the new currency of mortgages companies. You must wake up every day and figure out how to get more of that. And I think there's nobody else even on that's thinking like that to even be there. So I think if eyeballs are the currency and I'm a loan officer, I would go to the company that's leading right now in caring about that, and then therefore the results. So I see it in both your All of Us movement and NFM. Can you just speak about, does that come a little bit from that looking at ratings every day at the radio, or is it you got it?
I never really looked at ratings. The executives that hired me, they looked at that. But looking for the next story, thinking in ways you think other people are thinking, trying to deliver things before other people deliver them. That's just pure journalism. That's just a mindset. And there are 4 or 5 things I want to get out there right now, but I am a one-man show. I am helping to run a company. So this is not the brand you see on social media. That's not all I'm doing. That's just a percentage of what I do. It's probably 30%, but there are ancillary benefits to the company that we're out there and people know that we care a lot. And I think the addition of Rick Rock helped us too. You know, Rick is a guy, Dr. Rick Rock, who is out there producing great content too, and he gets a lot of eyeballs on his content. So I think more and more people are learning what NFM is and what we stand for. And you've got to be forward thinking. You know, I mentioned Brian and FinLocker, and you know, the business is changing considerably right now because we are dealing with the first ever cohort of digital natives. The way people behave, the consumer behavior is different. They want to talk about this purchase before we're used to them talking about it. And so it's a scary time, but it's also for mortgage companies, right? Because we're not used to this huge horizon. We're used to knowing when a lead comes in, hey, we can count on this turning into this amount of money within 45 to 60 days. Well, that's not the world we're heading towards right now. Now we're still, call it 80% in the traditional world, but believe me, that's going to continue to bleed over to 50-50. And the companies that aren't prepared to meet consumers where they are going to fail. Okay, period. And the companies that aren't embracing social media, they're going to fail. Period. Okay, I'm telling you right now, play this back in 2028 because it's happening whether you like it or not. With regard to the influencer division, this is something that it was my brainchild that I launched 4 years ago. Was fortunate enough to get the #1 guy on TikTok with over 1 million followers, you know, who has a mortgage license, who has traditional means of business, but moonlights as this personality online. And you know, we've driven in this 4-year period, something like 85,000 exclusive purchase leads that we haven't spent a dollar on. These are videos that we make where people click a link, come into our ecosystem. We put them in a funnel through automation. The ones that indicate their credit still needs some work, we move them over into this lane where we nurture through our partnership at FinLocker. And then the other ones that seem like they could qualify, they get dropped into our domestic call center where we have conversations. By the way, 92% of these people do not want to be called. Okay, we've pulled 10,000 of them. All right, and 48% of them want to be emailed. The other whatever percent wants to be text messaged. They do not want to be called. So we figure out whether they're a candidate for a purchase or not. If we feel like they are and they're answering the questions right, then we will at that point turn it into, we'll then introduce them to the loan officer in their state. And we have a round robin of qualified loan officers. It's another secret to this thing is it's not enough to get out there on social media. You've got to be at a company that can help you close these loans in every state in the country, because this is not targeted marketing. There's no geofencing. Okay. You're making a great video and people might respond in North Dakota and you're only licensed in Maryland. What is your company? How prepared is your company to take that lead in, nurture it, and then turn it into a closed loan? We obviously have that all figured out. Last week, our 12 or 13 influencers that we have. And again, these are all licensed people. I don't want you to think of them in the context of we're paying a certain amount every month for them to make content for us. That's not what this is. These are mortgage loan officers first who have a brand just like I have. I'm B2B, they're B2C. Last week, 19 million unique impressions across their social platforms. Just think about that for a minute. 19 million. Wild.
That is wild. I mean,
By-
there's
by the
another
way-
company that got 120 million, we'll call it impressions, right? And paid $7.5 million for that. So that's only
I think they
seven
paid,
times.
but
That's $1
you're talking
million.
about Ro- you're talking
You
about
got $1
Rocket.
million worth of spend right there for
Look, if you're
almost
talking
nothing.
about Rocket, you talk about the Rocket ad?
Yeah.
Yeah, the 7.5 million was for 30 seconds. Their ad was 60. Now I want to say this, like this is how my brain works. I did a post about that ad and I thanked Bill Emerson. You know why I thanked him? Because that was a great representation of our industry right there. Like to me, that shine a light on all of us. That was a gift from Rocket to me. Like I know it was a Rocket, and the other great thing they did is they didn't even say Rocket until the end. Like this was not like Rocket pimping themselves out. I really, and Mike, you actually jumped in and you took exception on my post with I think the fact that they didn't mention any originators. I saw it very differently. I really, you can get into the minutia of that. My point is that from my lens, I look at something like that and I'm like, bravo, thank you for spending that money. Thank you for putting the business, because we've had a lot of dark lights on us, right? Thank you for shining a light on the dream of home ownership and the role that we play in making that a reality. So I took part of that. Like it was a gift to me. It was a gift to our industry. And I think it's good that we look at things from that perspective, right? That's an abundance mindset. And as some other people probably looked at that and go and went, man, that's an abuse of money, or they spent all that money, or we don't have that money, or we can't compete. It's up to you to think like that. That's not how I saw it.
Now it's interesting that you bring that up, because in the Rocket ad, it's obviously for the purpose of mortgage lending. But when I've seen ads in the past regarding the real estate industry, for example, when NAR puts out something, they specifically mention to talk to your realtor and this, that, and the other. And this was with purposefully playing on words. This was an all of us moment, not just for mortgage lending, but for the first time homeowner, and for the first time homeowner to either work with their own family, maybe as a for sale by owner, or work with a realtor. It was an in the consumer face of home ownership. And that's what I appreciated, the message of that. It wasn't just, you included multiple cultures over multiple areas, even though they were singing about West Virginia. And so to have an all-inclusive type of commercial that didn't specifically mention #mortgage or for mortgage lending, but yet was all inclusive for home ownership and the dream of that. It was a dream come true, not just for West Virginia, wide America. I'm just going to say that, but it was for all inclusive for all types of people. And it was something for appreciation. And it was the all of us moment.
And
So
the military,
amazing...
the guy, thinking about how he can't wait to get home, and he's on the bus with a bunch of other service members. I mean, brilliant stroke, white, black, Asian, pregnant. I mean, it's just, they covered all the bases in 60 seconds and then somehow managed to get the stadium singing along live. Like, forget about it. That's one of the greatest advertising moments in the history of mankind, as far as I'm concerned. That was insane.
It's kind of like 4D advertising. I wonder how many songs can translate over to the field actually singing it. That would be probably top 5 possible songs that somebody would sing when you go over there. Great.
What an incredible idea. I don't know how they pulled that off, but they did, man. I guess they must have sunk up the ad with the stadium, AV
They weren't
system.
allowed to until 2 weeks before, because I think they do a lot of sponsorship with the NFL in general. And they finally got Fox wasn't going to agree to it. And to show it, the NFL didn't want to do a live commercial with Fox, and there was a problem. And then 2 weeks before, they got the call saying, okay, we are now open to the idea. How did you want to do that again? But it's a cool song.
Yeah.
And it was a great, I agree with you.
It's
It's great for home ownership over renting. It's great for the story behind home ownership. But
Mike,
yeah,
think about this for a
I would have
minute.
liked to answer in it, but that's me.
Think about it. Like you asked me about all of us, and I said it happened by accident. So the NFL, it sounds like, according to you, you seem well read on this. They were against this idea, right? Fox was against this idea, but they decided, you know what? We'll loosen it up. We'll let it happen. We'll see what happens. Now that it was such a success, I guarantee you that we'll see more of it, and that the number to do an ad that includes a live whatever at the end for 5 seconds, maybe it goes from 7.5 million to 12 million. I don't know, but the point is isn't there a lesson to be learned there about taking chances and having something really beautiful happen by accident as a result of shooting that shot? You can't make any of the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah. I think you'll see it just like the third quarter at all the colleges now. They all have their own song, and now they all have their own artist, right? Like Oklahoma does Toby Keith. We got a question from the Joe Darlene, Silverwork Solutions, client of Adopt the Brand. But we do these live for the sole purpose that you can come on and ask a live question. But since we are an audio podcast that comes out every Sunday, Joe Darlene says, Greg, big fan. Get in line. Just kidding. In 2024, existing home sales in the U.S. dropped to the lowest level in 30 years. How do you help support your loan officers to help support realtors in 2025?
Great question. Most of you are probably familiar with the HUD letter that came out in December. I think it was December 15th, 2022, around dual compensation. And so in that letter, it very clearly delineates who can and can't make a dual compensation on a mortgage transaction, and real estate agents were not on that list. And they were not on that list for a reason. And that is because the decision was made that only those that have a hand in the underwriting decision can't make dual compensation. And so where I'm going with this is that we've tried to create opportunities where the partnership makes sense for real estate agents to participate in some of the mortgage revenue. And a lot of lenders have done that, quite frankly. But that, to be very specific about an answer, that would be one of them. And another thing we do that's super unique is we do have an internal coaching program for how to build a brand. It's called the Creator. So we had the influencer division, then we rebranded it Creator Collective. And the internal coaching program is called Creator Collective Plus. And what that is for people on the outside, real estate agents, loan officers, and people on the inside to continuously learn how to build their brand in meaningful ways from our experts. So those are two ways.
Experts who have gotten 19 million views before we went off, right? $1 million worth of eyeballs, which again, I believe is the next currency for mortgages. Imagine being a loan officer and being able to bring that to your real estate agents, because everybody's going the same ones with all this new market insight tools. And so I think you need to find a way to not just go and tell them who they closed with, because somebody just walked out the door with that, going in with this. And, for Christmas, we got a projector that you plug in, like goes up on the wall. I don't think compared to what a projector used to be, I think it's affordable, where you could just go in, throw that website up on their huge wall. I mean, technology to present, if nothing else, with AI and with the ability of Amazon, is at an all-time low to look great if you prepare. And to come in with that site and show, hey, come with us, this is what we can do, and pay it forward. That's cool to know. And we'll make sure we put that in the show notes. I know we're coming up here about 5 minutes to go. So Michael, you had a quick question.
I had a question.
Triggering question.
You started off doing mailers 25 years ago, and which was great because you get to go direct to the consumer. Now you're in social media, which you also get to go directly to the consumer, right? Because we don't use U.S. Postal as often right now, or like I hardly go to the mailbox. And using social media, that's great. One of the indirect ways also that other originators, or companies, I should say, not necessarily originators, have used is the use of purchasing leads from the credit reporting agencies. And for those who don't know, they're called trigger leads. For our college age listeners and our young adults who don't know that, anytime a credit report is pulled, that lead, your inquiry to do that actually can be pulled and your information can be sold. It's been known as a backdoor way of credit companies to sell that information. And I'd like to get your I don't know how long we could talk about that soapbox, Greg, but if you could touch on that really quickly, and the future of that, especially because social media is much more prevalent. You've provided a usefulness for that. So can you talk about, number one, your opinion on trigger leads, and then number two, how not only through NFM, but you with our other colleagues in the mortgage industry, they can follow suit with social media rather than the purchase and sale of credit in trigger leads.
Well, I think we're all in agreement that trigger leads, except for the people that need them to survive in their business, call centers and such, that they're a nuisance to the consumer, right? You take out a loan or you get your credit pulled and all of a sudden you're getting called by 15, 20, 30 people who are just relentless. That's not supposed to happen. The reason it happens, though, and the reason it hasn't been stopped is because there's way, 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 way too much money going from pocket to pocket, from FICO to TransUnion to Equifax to Experian to the CRAs who we buy our credit reports from. It is the most tangled, insane web. It's wild, and everybody's blaming everybody else. FICO says, "Well, we're just saying the price is $495." Then we hand it over to the credit bureaus. What they do with that, at that point, is not up to us. And then you say to the CRAs, "Hey, why is this price?" Well, the credit bureau did that to us. And now it's even more complicated because we have VantageScore, which is supposed to be there to help compete with FICO to bring prices down, and they can't even get off the ground. And ironically, the three credit bureaus own them. It's like the most convoluted mess. There was a Credit Competition Act that was passed by Trump 1.0 in 2018, which gave the FHFA the authority to make sure that competition came into the space. Well, that hasn't happened yet, and we're all these years later, and we're still in the dark. The lobbying influence, the amount of money that's going back and forth, it's a travesty, honestly. And yes, the consumer ends up paying for it. It makes the cost to produce a mortgage even that much more expensive. I love the idea that former CFPB director Rohit Chopra floated. I'm not sure if he was the one that authored it or was jumping on someone else's idea, but this idea that you control your credit report, that you get your credit report pulled, and then when you want to share it with a lender, you give them the key to that, and it's good for a certain period of time. Now, that makes a lot of sense, right? But is that going to happen? I mean, it's so twisted and convoluted that, first of all, FICO doesn't sell the trigger leads. The credit bureaus sell the trigger leads. But guess what happens when when the credit bureaus sell a trigger lead? Well, a FICO score is pulled. So FICO has their hands in this every which way, right? So it's repulsive, man. It's completely disgusting. And honestly, the NBA is their hands are kind of tied, right? There's only so much that they can do. And I think we saw that. Like Bob Brooksmith, the president, and Pete Mills and others did all that they could do, along with the CHLA and BAC and NAMBA and NAMB. Like, everybody teamed up to do the best that they could do. But at the end of the day, greed, corruption, money trumps all. That's what we found out. So hopefully you understand how I feel, Michael, about that.
Yeah, I know you're talking.
I'm not sure which
Michael
Michael
there, mic'd up. I got one final question for you. It's a little bit it'll get you going. If not, it's an idea for the future for you, but it's definitely a topic.
You've not given out my LinkedIn page once, by the way. Are you ever going to do that? Am I going to pick up one follower from this? What's going on here?
I am anticipating at least 1,200 views after this is live. It does very well circulating on my feed. If you The record is Shelley Duffy has 2,300 views on her show and about 2,500 minutes watched. So there is a precedent that you will pop. Just in the middle of the day, sometimes we don't get the huge pop right away. Okay, so
I'll do a quick PSA before your question. Please follow
Yes.
me, GREGSHER. I've got a blue All of Us shirt on. If you follow me, I'll follow you back. And I can't remember the last time someone DM'd me and I didn't respond. So I'm very collaborative. I want to hear what people are thinking about, what's upsetting them, what's exciting them, what they're encouraged by. You know, I want to elevate as many voices as I can. Sorry, ask your question.
No, and Alan Berkowitz pronounced it. You gave the most clearest answer of trigger leads he has heard. So, Alan, make sure you tell everybody to follow Greg. Reach out to him, Greg. After you posted
knocking,
about
Alan,
that,
if you could just start knocking on your neighbor's doors. I'd like you to hit at least 1,000 doors today, and have people follow me. Thank you. That's a joke, mic'd up. Come on now.
I was laughing. Sorry, I got to laugh more. Like I have to have a radio laugh so people can hear it. Okay, you had a post that I don't think received enough attention, and was you saying where is the NBA stance on RESPA, and how their open letter sounded a little bit in favor of larger companies being able to buy these MSA realtor shops where lower companies might not have the budget. Wasn't very specific. And I actually thought of you as Bob Brokesmith spoke at the IMB when he talked about how they may have been against GSEs in the past, but they recognize how essential they are, and they represent the best housing finance system in the world, which I know all of us agrees with. One of the places that he said they are going to be fighting for as it goes into conservatorship, and I thought of you, and then he kind of grazed over it because it was one of 4 points, and I haven't heard any IMB leaders talk about it. So I just want to bring it to your attention for a future post. But number 2 is level the playing field so that pricing and underwriting doesn't vary based on size, business model, capital. So if it does go privatized, and I know the community home lenders of America will hopefully be talking about this, but I think it's very important now before it's too late that IMB leaders, like you were speaking about in the beginning of the show, actually they're a little bigger. The mid-size that follow you are very aware that they could reach out to probably you or somebody, but they need to make sure that the MBA is pushing number 2 more than any others, because if it does go private and these larger companies get better Fannie and Freddie pricing, that is not good for all of us.
Yeah, well, we had an instance where there were credit hikes, but a certain number of the larger players, for some reason, were not subject to that. You're aware of that, I think, right?
I was shocked though that when Taylor and others brought, like, somebody had to go find it out for that to happen.
I mean, it's infuriating that would happen. I don't want to go down that road. You know, I'm not in the
GSE road.
I'm
As
not.
it goes private, are you worried that it's going to get too commercialized and the top 10 lenders are going to have some backdoor way of getting better pricing?
Of course, I'm worried about all of it. Yeah, I'm worried about RESPA reform, and if you're able to give gifts of appreciation that vary, if you're able to pay more for an MSA, not based on a valuation, but based on a feel that you're maybe on the right street corner that has more traffic than the MSA 2 miles away where no one ever walks by. And even though that M-Link or whoever says it's only worth two grand because there's a real estate office in there, or you can quantify that 6,000 people walk by your storefront every day because there's the best restaurant in town there, you can all of a sudden pay $5 grand for it. What I'll say to this is that I'm not in the best place with the NBA right now. It's the price you pay for being vocal, and I'm not always right. And sometimes they give me more information, and you know, hopefully sometimes I give them more information. I don't think any of us are impervious to not always having it right. I am, talking to them and trying to understand the RESPA issue a little bit better. I'm going to have, I think, their counsel on my podcast one-on-one, which I have every Monday on. If you go to my LinkedIn and go to events, you can see every Monday at 1 Eastern. I've got my own podcast one-on-one where I go one-on-one with someone. this past week, I talked to Mark Calabria, former FHA commissioner. We could talk about all these things for
Love that
a
show.
long time. But my point is that the NBA is they've gotten so big. It's hard for them. It's hard for them to make everybody happy. In fact, it's impossible, right? And I want to continue to try and have a good relationship with them, and hopefully they want to continue to try and have a good relationship with me. But social media it's the great equalizer now, and it's something they've got to contend with and understand and realize. And I'm not saying they're doing this, even though my post, I did say this in the post, but you know, I'm stepping off of the gas a little bit on this to say that you can't ignore social media. You just can't anymore. This is going to be a part of the culture. It's going to bleed into the NBA every day. And you can't just have these rescue missions where you throw 5 or 6 people into a thread to give the NBA position. I think that the NBA needs to partner with the loudest voices out there and collaborate. I don't ever get calls from them to say, how do we collaborate? How do we work closely? The only time I get a call from them is to slap me on the wrist or to complain or to say, you know, we're not happy with you, or it's hard to defend you within these walls. That's not what I want. It's not good for the business, and it's not going to work. Okay, that's a fact. So I don't know if I took it where you want to take it, but you know, we need the NBA. We need other trade organizations badly. The work they do is tireless. Pete Mills is a brilliant guy. We just got to wrap our arms around each other and embrace everyone, even when the views aren't the same. And if there's always, I'm always open to an opportunity to educate me more. And I realize I don't know everything, right? I think that's where it begins. But they got to realize they don't know everything either.
They also have to promote voices within. And if you don't promote voices within, you become complacent. And some of the behind the scenes talk I've heard about the Mortgage Bankers Association is, since the CFPB came out and since the administration is very play it nice in DC, but there was a time before the financial crisis, and if you're talking to somebody old school, they'll call it FTC, where the NBA actually was much more edgy against DC. They were much more pushed back. They would fight, and they would, in this case, fight for more of the different types of non-Fannie Freddie loans and the gray area loans, and say, you know, we need to go out there and be able to give these and not just conform. And that people are hoping that with what's happening in DC now, that there is some teeth that are going to come back versus playing super nice and going out to lunch with them and playing nice. At the same time, there's other people that are very happy with the NBA too. So, but I think it does have a lot of fixing to do. I always talk about it needs to figure out a better way to help the state MBAs, as they could use some national help. It could figure out a better way to have the vendor relationship at these conferences, as the lenders are.
Well, that's another thing I'm hearing a lot about lately, which you talk about the topics and digging in, like from what I've heard, and this is a super sensitive area, that vendors are not, you know, universally happy with how events go down at all places. I'm not just talking about the NBA, but any of these things. They just feel like they're, you know, slaughterhouses. They're just ushered in and nobody pays attention to them. Like, I think we have to find, you got to create, man. You got to create ways to have everybody feeling great about all of these events. And, you know, and you also got to get current. You can't keep rolling people out on stage that haven't had a, you know, #1 hit for 40 years. Like, we got to get with the times, man. Like, we have to like start to embrace each other, the all of us thing. Like Laura Hopkins, my dear friend, who you know, I consider a close friend of mine, who works at the NBA. She did a post with the all of us hat and the NBA hat on top of it, and it was just a beautiful moment for me. And I'm not sure everybody inside there understands or feels that way. I think Laura understands, but we have here's the thing, we have the greatest opportunity ever to rise up and bring everyone together. And that's the conversation I want to have. Forget everything else I've said. Vendors, originators, IMBs, everyone, NBA, CHLA, whoever, like, let's go. Let's all band together and let's remember why we're here. It's to serve the consumer.
And I've learned, being on the front of technology from the app days, you know, if you're green, you're growing. If not, you're turning into rust. And Greg's voice, drawing eyeballs to the NBA keeps it green and keeps it growing. Regardless of the voice, it keeps it relevant so that people do attend and they believe it's relevant. Otherwise, it's dues in the mail, and that's not going to survive.
By the way, I'm a client. I mean, look, that's the other thing. I pay them. We pay them well. Okay, we don't have to do that. I've got choices. Like, don't make it like you're doing me a favor. Okay. I mean, I'm helping to continue it. I'm giving you all this money while a member of yours, FICO, continues to raise their prices. Like, I don't want to go there, right? Like, but I'm just saying, like, let's just be fair with everyone, how complicated it is. And let's go out of our way to appreciate the fact that, yeah, I'm a member of the NBA, and I've encouraged other people, hundreds, thousands on posts to be a part of the NBA, and I will continue to. I'm hopeful that adversity is what builds character in people. It's also what builds character in relationships, but it's got to be a two-way street. I'm waiting for that call to come down. It's a 20-minute ride for me from where I live to go down to the NBA and to sit across from Bob, Marsha, Pete, whoever, and have a conversation about how we can move the industry forward together. But so far, that my phone's not rung, not for anything like that.
Countdown to when it does ring. I'm heading out to the ICE conference, and I've been vocal about ICE being a marketplace more than just Encompass, and hoping that I, am warmly welcome there as a contributor to the mortgage industry. But I'll be out there in Vegas coming up and reporting live on how that conference is. I'm just so fascinated by that company.
I may go.
They are big.
I may go. I don't know if you had a chance to listen, but
I tuned in from wire to wire from sports.
This past Monday, I interviewed on my podcast Tim Bowler, who's the president of Mortgage ICE, of ICE Mortgage Technologies. That's right there on my page. Go and listen to it. Fascinating. I mean, he goes over a lot of things. I did challenge him on some of the things that are floating out there in the ether about ICE trying to be a monopoly, trying to serve just the big banks. He was very honest, and I thought he made a compelling argument for why ICE is focused on all of us.
Yeah,
cool.
He wasn't wrong, but
hey, look, everyone's got tough jobs, man. But
he's not wrong. Everybody's coming after the LOS game.
Hey, guess what's in the middle of all of it? Money.
Yes,
everything we talked about, man.
Except all of us. So with that said, Michael's out. Do you want to take us home here? Greg, we appreciate you coming on the show. We will link what you were mentioning about the realtor influencer opportunities you give your loan officers to give to realtors. We'll give a link for the NFM influencer division so that loan officers can come check that out.
Anyway, just give a link to me. Too many links, man. I'm getting you're drowning me in links. If you just
I was going to tell you, I'm going to repost your ICE show tonight on my feed.
That's good. I appreciate that, Mike. You guys are legends. Mic'd Up, I will say, was my creation. They did not always call it Mic'd Up, and one day I said to Mike Kelleher, I said, you got to call this Mic'd Up, man. It's a no-brainer. So that was how. I will forever be woven into the DNA of this award-winning show.
And it's recorded you saying it, so you can prove it.
This is great. Yeah, amazing.
Okay, great.
Brian View is just as he gets older, his tolerance for anything has just waned. You notice that? Including the use of a comb, by the way. I'm not sure when the last time you saw him was, but my goodness.
Thank you, Greg, for coming on. We do have the outro here because I can tell you have to go, and I just want to make sure it locally uploads.
I had to go 20 minutes ago. See you guys.